Hello, everybody, and welcome to Your Little Sisters Productions. This is Missed Opportunities. Today we are talking about the 2020 Sonic the Hedgehog.
Which really has nothing to do with the video game other than the fact that it has the main character in it. It's an in-name only adaptation, basically.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the comic books that came from it. It has nothing to do with the video game. Basically, it is just a cute movie that has some nostalgia for Sonic the Hedgehog video gamers. Pretty much it.
And JimCarrey.
Yes, and James Marsden, who I love. So,
I do
you
love
know,
James Marsden. He does good movies. It's hard for me to see him in non-musical roles because of Enchanted and Hairspray.
well, I mean, so, okay. James Marsden is my brother-in-law, like to a T. And he was originally in the first time I ever saw him was in X-Men, the original X-Men that they came out with. And
Yes, a
he is
Cyclops.
Yeah, he's Cyclops. And then he's in a relationship with Jean Grey, who is like a redhead with long, straight hair, like my sister. So I don't know. I will never really see him as anything but like the adorable uh Cyclops that reminds me of my brother-in-law. So I love him in everything that he is in. Really, I've never seen him in anything that I didn't like. I mean, I didn't like Return to Superman, but I liked him.
I'm just thinking now knowing your family, and knowing that James Marsden reminds you of your brother-in-law. How do you feel about Enchanted? Were you trying to get your brother-in-law and your sister to dress up as characters from Enchanted?
So funny story. My cousin was married to Amy Adams' cousin. I guess technically they are still married. She passed away recently. But yeah, so Amy Adams' cousin was married to my cousin. And so it was kind of like, like I'm almost related to someone famous.
6 degrees of separation and all that.
Yeah, and all that. So that's pretty much when I saw Enchanted what I was thinking. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Scott and my almost cousin.
Your whole family is just in that movie.
Really, honestly.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, there's a little backstory to James Marsden for both of us. I mean, I guess the first thing I saw him in technically would have been X-Men, but I always relate him to his musical roles. I
No,
don't know
I
why.
think of
That's the
him.
first thing I think of.
I do think of him in Hop now because that is one of my sister's favorite movies. I also think of him with 27 Dresses because everybody said that I look like Katherine Heigl and he looks like my brother-in-law. So that movie is actually really awkward for me.
Remember that night? Oh my gosh, had to be a few years ago because I'm pretty sure I wasn't married yet. And we stayed up at your cabin and we watched 27 Dresses.
Yes.
You never told me you felt awkward.
Well, it's a really cute movie, and I do like it. It's just when anybody compares Katherine Heigl to me, because I'm blonde hair, I have around her face like she does, and so people associate me with her. And she's like one of those celebrities that, like, if I was a celebrity, I'd look like her. And then, of course, James Marsden looks like Scott, so it's kind of weird. And like my sister doesn't like that movie because it looks like her sister and her husband.
That's funny. That's
But
really
I like that
funny.
movie because I can disassociate it. Like I don't think I look like Katherine Heigl, so it's fine with me. It's fine for me. It's just awkward for my sister.
Your poor sister. Every movie James Marsden does, she has to see her husband with someone else.
Or she just pictures herself like Jean Grey. Like my sister has long red hair, and I mean in Enchanted she has long red
Long red
hair.
hair.
Yeah.
There you
So
go.
I mean he
So
doesn't end up with her
basically,
though, huh?
as long as he does movies with redheads, we're good.
Yes. Anyway, back to this movie. His wife is not a redhead in
No.
this movie. She's a vet and she is black and she did a really good job too. I think everybody did a really good job in this movie. Like all of the actors,
Yeah,
like
they were
even like
actually they cast this movie really well, very believable for a fantasy story about a little blue alien hedgehog.
yeah, like everybody did a good job. Like even the Wade, the other cop, he was hilarious and I thought he did a good job.
He was so funny and
Um,
he came off really so Wade in the movie. I mean, we'll do a summary, but I don't know if I would have mentioned Wade on his own, so I'll just tell you now. Really, how do I say this nicely? Intellectually challenged, not able to put two and two together and make it four without help.
right.
Just but the sweetest person you'll ever really truly sweet and loyal, not able to hold things together on his own, poor guy. But and that's a really difficult role to play because it can come off as extremely unbelievable, like a lot in this movie. We'll talk about it. But that role in particular, I was really worried when I first saw that character. I was like, oh no, they put this kind of character in, that's gonna be awful. Like it's so hard to pull off. He pulled it off really well. I was very impressed. And they didn't
Yeah.
use him as comedic. Oh my gosh, why am I forgetting the word? They didn't use him as comedic relief as often, which I was glad about because I think other movies probably would have seen a character like that and tried to make them the comedic relief of the movie and focus a lot more on them and their kind of stupid moments. And I'm glad this movie did, and it kept his involvement exactly as I think it needed to be in order for it to be realistic.
Yeah, I think they utilized all of the characters really well. And I think, like you said, they were cast really well. And I thought like the chemistry on screen in this movie was so good. Like him and his wife, I actually believe, like, and there's a lot of times when they're married at the beginning of a movie that you really don't see their chemistry. And I was worried about that because I was like, oh, he lives with her, so like they're already married. But then like seeing them together like on the couch when they're watching the movie and like the way they interact and when they're talking about like she pulls out the one cake and she's like San Francisco sucks and she's like oh wait wrong one and pulls out the other cake, like I thought that whole conversation was adorable. So could like casting in this movie was so great and I love the chemistry between James Marsden and Jim Carrey. Like
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, I was so excited. I love James Marsden, but I love Jim Carrey. And I think Jim Carrey has some of the best acting chops in the business. Like he is the king of physical comedy. And like to see him next to James Marsden and James Marsden just being like the straight man in this, I loved it so much. Like I was just there for it. I was just all in watching like the first scene when they interact when he's like, why would I let you into my house? Like that whole thing. Because like Jim Carrey was so over the top, but at the same time, I believed him, like, and James Marsden was like so hilarious and just serious and straight faced and like, huh, one like I mean, and that's how you would be with someone that was as ridiculous as Dr. Robotnik. That's how you would have to be. You'd be like, I don't think that's true. Like, you got bullied as a kid and you're ridiculous. And then he punches him in the face, which I just think is brilliant. So, anyway,
We need to do a quick
now that
summary.
I'm done gushing, now that I'm done gushing, let's go ahead and do the summary.
Okay,
Good
so
casting. That was
let's
all.
great casting. Well, yeah. I always like to point out when the acting is really good in movies, just because I come from an acting background. And anyway, so the summary of this movie is actually really simple. Sonic the Hedgehog was born on another planet. I don't remember if they told us the name of it. If you know the name of it, let us know, because I sure don't. He was born on this planet and he was being raised by this giant owl named Longclaw. She raised him and she protected him of these golden rings, and if you threw them while thinking about a place, it would open up a portal. Think like Doctor Strange magic, like big circle portal to another place. and you go through it and it lasts for only a certain amount of time. Well, he gets found out because he ran across his little island on his planet, and Longclaw and him have to run away from these bad guys who are trying to capture Sonic and utilize his powers of super speed and, as you find out later, lightning, and basically like a lifelong power source, excuse me, battery source. Power source, like a battery, but forever and ever. So he runs away, and then the next time we see him, he is on Earth in this little place called Green Hills, a very small town. You find out that he's been there for a little while. He has a cave, he has a bunch of stuff he likes, and he's been spying on the people in this little town. And he's come up with nicknames for them as he's not really interacted with them. The sheriff of the town Donut Lord, because he sees him eating donuts and he also sees him talking things out to the donuts before eating them. He calls Donut Lord's wife Pretzel Lady because she does yoga, and he always tries to mimic her and he can't, and he's like, she must have been born without bones and she can fold herself into a pretzel, so she's Pretzel Lady. And you find out that Donut Lord and Pretzel Lady are actually Tom and, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting her name. What's the wife's name? I was going to say Kate. Is that correct?
I don't think so. What was her name?
I feel awful. I really liked her. She's a veterinarian. She's very smart, very pretty. As Taya said, great chemistry with James Marsden. I just can't remember her name.
I don't remember her name at all.
I kept calling her Pretzel Lady throughout the movie.
We'll just call her Pretzel Lady. It's fine.
Oh, and then I'll refer to Tom as Donut Lord. He's now Donut Lord for the rest of the time as well, because, and I will be honest, the only reason I remember his name was Tom was because I think Taya mentioned his name was Tom earlier. I would have just kept calling him Donut Lord. So that's where my mind is with names tonight. I'm usually better.
Honestly, the reason I remember his name is because he's like, my name is Tom, and he's like, everybody calls me Tom except my dentist who calls me Tim, and like they have that whole
conversation,
like conversation about it. Because I was all for that conversation. I really, really liked it.
See, I would have just remembered I've been calling him Tim the whole time. Anyway, their names are Donut Lord and Pretzel Lady. They're married, and Donut Lord, the sheriff of the small town, wants to get out. He wants to be a cop somewhere where there's more going on than there is in Green Hills, because it's very like Andy Griffith-esque kind of little town. Nothing really big ever happens. It's a pretty easy gig to be sheriff there for the most part. And he applies to go to the San Francisco Police Department. He gets accepted, which is what Taya was talking about with the 2 cakes. His wife bought 2 cakes. One was saying San Francisco sucks, in case he didn't get it, and one saying I never had a doubt, like, let's go San Francisco, if he got it. And I thought that was really funny as well, and really good show of support either way. So they're talking about going to San Francisco. He's super excited. Meanwhile, we jump back over to Sonic. He sees a baseball game and he sees the camaraderie between the kids and like the town, and he is just so lonely and he so wants to be a part of it. So he plays a baseball game on his own because he is that fast. And at the end of it, he realizes that he really is alone and that he can never be a part of their world. And he gets really angry and goes super, super fast to try and work out his emotions. And his emotions heighten up to the point where he releases this huge power surge that takes out the power, like up and down the eastern seaboard. I'm pretty sure is what they said. Like the Pacific Northwest area, basically completely out of power because of him. And the whole town starts freaking out. Wade is at the police station by himself, and he's just staring at the phone as it rings, which is, really great for a 911 dispatcher to do. Is just stare at the phone while people call during an emergency instead of answering it. But that's the lead. Everyone was really shook. That gets the notice of the government because they want to know if this was an act of, a malicious act against the country. And one of them suggests calling in this super genius person, and people aren't super keen on the idea, but they let him come anyway. It ends up with that. And you find out it's Jim Carrey's Dr. Robotnik. Also, only know the name because of Taya. We've switched places tonight, as you can tell with the name. He comes in and he's very pompous, very over the top, as Taya said, and he wants to get to the bottom of what caused this power to go out. They end up going to Green Hills. He finds out, about the location of where it happened, and this is the scene where Tay is talking about. As he's going to Green Hills, Sonic is trying to run away because he notices they're getting close to him. He gathers up a backpack of things to take and he gets the rings out, but then they're right outside his door. And he's like, if I throw this ring to go to the next world, which is a world full of mushrooms, that's his next location after Earth, is a world that literally has nothing in it but mushrooms. If he throws that then and they come into the door, they can still go after him and follow him into the world of mushrooms. So he says, I have to get out of here. I have to go somewhere else that's safe and wait until I can throw this and go to the next world. And he ends up in, it was like a garage, was it, Taya? Or a greenhouse?
It was his
His
garage.
garage. James Marsden's Donut Lord's garage. He thinks, Donut Lord, he thinks that it's these raccoons who've been bothering their trash cans again. He goes out and sees Sonic and, of course, freaks out because it's a giant blue talking hedgehog. Well, I don't know if he talks then, but it's a giant blue hedgehog. And, oh, he does talk then. Anyway, he freaks out and he accidentally shoots him with a tranquilizer gun. And Sonic sees his shirt, which says San Francisco on it, which he was wearing because he just got into the San Francisco PD. And as the golden ring falls out of his hand, he says San Francisco, and the ring opens up a giant portal to San Francisco. And then as he's passing out, he drops his whole bag of all his golden rings that he has, which are his ways to teleport between worlds, of this building in San Francisco. And then the portal closes as he passes out completely. Donut Lord has no idea what to do with all of this, so he puts Sonic in a cage and he tries to figure out what to do. Sonic tells him that he wakes up and tells him that he's in trouble and that he wasn't able to escape because of him and he has to help him. And this is when Dr. Robotnik comes to the door of the house and they have this wonderful exchange that really is very funny. But eventually Dr. Robotnik gets in the house, finds out Sonic is there, and there's a little bit of a tussle. He gets hit in the face by Donut Lord, and Donut Lord and Sonic escape. And at first, I'm going to call him James Marsden. Donut Lord just is sounding weird. James Marsden's character tries to get rid of Sonic by telling him San Francisco is west, just go straight, you'll find it. I don't want to have to, go through this adventure with you. Sonic goes west, but then goes into the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific, right? Just had to make sure I was getting my geography correct. Yes. Goes into the Pacific Ocean, comes back with a fish on his head, and is like, I just went straight into the ocean. I don't know what I'm doing. I need your help. Sonic is basically a child. Like, he's a kid, so he really does need help. And he basically guilt trips James Marsden's character into going on this road trip with him and helping him find his golden ring so he can escape. And they go on this adventure, and there's a lot of things that happen. They end up in a bar, and then which maybe I should explain more. They end up in a bar because James Marsden's character wanted to use a payphone, and Sonic went into the bar and wanted to hang out there. And then they get into a tussle there and they leave, and Sonic is like, woohoo, our life is great. And then they go to this hotel, and Sonic basically parties in the hotel room because, again, he thinks life on Earth is great and is about to leave it soon. And he and James Marsden's character bond. Well, they get to San Francisco, and his wife is there with her sister and her sister's kid, their niece, because she was looking at apartments for them to move to since he got the job as a police officer there. However, on the news, it's been saying that James Marsden's character is a terrorist because the government is trying to track him down. And what's a better way of tracking someone down than basically saying that they're wanted for something that's really big and scary? So he shows up, and his sister-in-law, who already doesn't like him, tries to kick him out. But then she sees Sonic, who is passed out at this point because they had a really big tussle with Dr. Robotnik I keep saying tussle, I don't know why. They had a really big fight with Dr. Robotnik on the way there, and Sonic passed out. And she passes out after seeing Sonic. And they actually tie her up because she was being a threat and threatening to call like the FBI and CIA and everything on him. And when Sonic wakes up, the wife gets also a little like, what the heck is going on? He's a talking giant blue hedgehog. I'm a vet. I've never seen this before. And their niece gives Sonic these red sneakers, the red sneakers that he is known for. Whenever you see Sonic, he has these gorgeous red and white sneakers. He wasn't wearing them for the first part of the movie. And in this movie, it's canon that this little girl sees that his shoes are worn out and gives him these red shoes. I thought it was a very sweet moment, and I really liked it. But they leave that house, and the wife agrees to help them get to the building. They get to the building, they have to you have to get a special key to get up to the roof. So he basically uses the fact that he's a police officer to get them up to the roof. They find the rings, but Dr. Robotnik has arrived, and he found a quill from Sonic, and he is using that quill to power all his machines, especially the like, I don't know, is it like a mini airplane drone that
Yeah, it's like a hover drone that holds a
yeah, it's like a
person.
hover. I'm like, it's not exactly an airplane, but it's like a mini hover drone. But if it's him in there, he's using it to power it. So when Sonic is going really fast, and usually everything is frozen around him because he's going so fast, Dr. Robotnik is able to actually match his speed. So they have this really great thing where they go from like world to world to world for a little bit and like place to place because Sonic's throwing these rings and trying to get rid of him. And he can't shake him and he doesn't know why. He's like, I've never had someone match my speed before. This is crazy. And one last big fight. They end up back in Green Hills thanks to the golden rings. But they have one last stand down. Everyone in Green Hills comes and they are supportive of their sheriff and they don't believe all the news stories and they stand up to him. And Sonic realizes that he has this really big power. He can use all this lightning and he goes against him and ends up throwing a ring to Mushroom World and sending Dr. Robotnik to said Mushroom World and then closing the portal before he can get out. And everyone's happy, and James Marsden character says, you know what, I'd rather stay in Green Hills. This is where my family is and the people I care about are, and this is where I'd rather be, is helping these people. And then at the end of the movie, this man from the government who we saw at the beginning, he's the one who wanted Dr. Robotnik to join and figure out what was going on. He comes and says, thank you for not talking about this incident. Here's something from the government. Gives him like a $50 gift card to Olive Garden, which I guess, yay, thanks for that, government. There's an Olive Garden joke throughout the whole movie. And you find out that Sonic is actually living with Pretzel Lady and Donut Lord now. They made him a room in the attic and ends happy. And you have a little bit of a scene of Dr. Robotnik on the Mushroom World losing his sanity a bit, and he shaves his head, and he had a huge mustache, and Sonic called him Eggman at one point, and I'm pretty sure that's a direct reference to either the video game or the comic books or both of how he looks and what he's called. And it just kind of ends with him saying that he was determined to get off that planet, and he still had Sonic's quill with him. And so he was going to figure out a way to get off that planet, get back to Earth, and have his revenge on Sonic. And that's the movie.
Yeah, pretty much. And there is a teaser. Tails shows up at the end and is looking for Sonic. So that's a teaser for a second
Oh, that's right.
movie.
I forgot. I actually didn't see it this time. I saw it the first time I saw this movie, but I forgot about it this time. Yes, Tails shows up.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's the movie. It's surprisingly good for it being a, CGI mixed with live action, for being based off of a video game, because video game movie adaptations don't have a very good reputation. And this one, yeah, and I think this one kind of falls in the same thing because they completely went off of the source material. So it's kind of like, is it a video game adaptation or is it using the character to your advantage? Like, I don't know if I would necessarily call it an adaptation. because it's different. And so I think that if you are a fan of the video game and you don't care, or the comics, and you don't care about the story, or you're not looking for the story, you're just looking for the character, I think you'll be fine, because it is a really good movie. But yeah, don't go into it thinking that it's anything at all like what the storyline is in either the comics or the video game, because it's not. It's just a cute story, and it has Sonic. It's Sonic for a new generation, basically, because it's gonna, it's completely different. And maybe they'll make video games after it, like they'll make the storyline with Donut Lord. You never know. Yeah, so one thing we wanted to just mention. So this movie is, I just want to give props to the studio for this, because this movie sent out, released not footage. They released pictures of what was coming, like, as a way of advertising for the movie. They give out like little stills and posters and stuff of what the character is going to look like to get people excited for the movie. And people hated the look of Sonic. Like, they hated the way that they created him. He looked way too human. He had human teeth he had like human eyes. It was really weird. And people complained, and they complained so much that the studio was like, okay, we'll change the release date. And they went back and they redesigned Sonic completely, and then went back and redid the entire movie, adding in the new look of Sonic. So props to the studio. That was really awesome of them that they did that they listened to the fans. And I really think that it made a difference, because like, this movie had a lot going for it. And if Sonic had been that creepy looking kind of humanoid, I think it would not have done as well, even with the great casting and stuff. If you have a bad animated character, it's going to ruin even a really great casting choice, So I was really happy that the studio did that they listened to their fans, and that they actually changed the design. Which, that takes a lot of money. That takes a lot of time. It was a big deal that they did this. And I want this movie to be successful, because I want people in studios to realize that this is something that is important. If your fans hate the way that you've designed something, you can change it, and it's worth changing it, because the movie will do better.
See, I feel like I bring up Star Wars in almost every podcast. It's so relatable, though, because I feel like Disney took fans' opinions too seriously about their 7, 8, and 9. But the people who did Sonic, which, forgive me, I can't remember which, is it Sony? I want to say it's Sony, but maybe it's not. The studio who did Sonic listened to their fans, so they actually improved their movie. Disney with Star Wars after 7, there is like a really big part of the fan base that didn't like 7, and so they listened to that fan base and they went a completely opposite direction for 8. But then the people who like 7 hated 8, and so they listened to the people who hated 8, and they went and did 9 with the same director from 7.
Well, the problem with the way that Disney handled Star Wars was the fact that they were listening to fans, but they were listening to fans incorrectly. The fans weren't saying, hey, we don't like the way that you're dealing with this character. We don't like this. They said they had legitimate concerns, and then the legitimate concerns weren't actually addressed in 8. They didn't. 8 was not a good movie. And if you like the way that 8 was done, you can, because you can like 8, it's fine. But if you like 8, then you're not going to like the other 2 movies, because 8 sets up a different style of 100%, Star Wars. Yeah. And so it's you have to either like the style or not like the style. The style wasn't the problem with 7. That was the thing, is they didn't have a problem with the way that the aliens were designed. They didn't have a problem. They didn't have a Jar Jar Binks moment where they didn't think anybody was specifically annoying. What they had a problem with was the fact that it wasn't an original story. It was a New Hope gender bent. And they didn't give a lot of characterization to Rey in that movie. They just made her this character that could do anything, and then they didn't explain why. And people are like, okay, well, we need to know why, because otherwise you just created this character that has no flaws, and that's very hard to get behind. Well, rather than listening to that and just making the next movie better and making it not following the exact same storyline as the other ones, like, they didn't listen to their fans in the right way. They went a completely 180 different direction. And then when the fans got mad that they did that, they're like, oh no, we made a mistake, and they went back. Like, they didn't listen to their fans. They placated to their fans. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't say, this is a bad design or this is the problem. They said, oh, you're not happy? Well, we'll do something completely different to make you happy. And then, oh, you're not happy with that? We'll go back to
Which
the
is
old one.
ridiculous.
I feel like there's panhandling, and then there's, oh, you know what? This design isn't gelling with our fans. We're going to go back and we're going to make a design that gels with our fans.
Yes.
That's the difference. It's like, they listen, like, this studio listened to their fans this studio listened to their fans and changed a design. They didn't change they didn't change the way that they were making the movie, and they didn't make the sequel just a completely different movie. They didn't ruin the storyline in order to placate to fans. What they did was redesign character,
which I really appreciate. And I just wanted to point out that difference, because Disney, you're right, Disney didn't actually really listen to what fans were saying, and they had a chance. And with 8, and I might have had a different opinion back when we did 8, I've actually changed my opinion on a lot of Star Wars things since we've done the podcast, because now when I think Star Wars, I think of it critically, which is fine. That's what we do. But 8 is a great movie, but it's not a great Star Wars movie because, as you said, it changed the formula of how Star Wars has been done before. We had 7 movies before 8 that had a very formulaic way of going about how the story was told and how everything went and what characters you had and blah, blah, blah. And 8 came and changed that. And actually now, looking back, I'm like, you know what? 8 as a movie, not a Star Wars movie, but as a movie, I enjoyed a lot of the things they set up. I actually enjoyed parts of it that they set up in the Star Wars universe, not all of it, but parts of it. And I actually was excited to see where they were going to go after 8 and fix it. But they didn't. They didn't actually go after 8. They just erased it. Anyway, this is not a Star Wars podcast. Sorry. I just wanted to point out the difference between really, truly listening to your fans and giving them something that, they grew up with Sonic. They want to see something that they really love on screen, and they want to be able to, and we want to give that to them. So we're going to go back and redesign it, versus a studio that did not actually listen to the fans. Made a lot more people angry for a lot more reasons than the original one. So, bottom line, truly listen to people and make sure you're actually listening to them and respecting them, and also respecting your story and making sure it's cohesive and not just pandering, because pandering doesn't actually ever make anyone happy.
And honestly, I think the way that they could have fixed it was they could have kept the same director for these 3 movies, like the last 3 movies, 7, 8, and 9, and then given 10, 11, and 12 to the new director and gone a completely different way then. There's no limit to how many movies you can do in Star Wars. You know what I mean? So it's and now they have TV shows, several are coming out, and so it's you know what? You didn't have to do it this, you didn't have to change your story this time. You could have gone a different direction after these 3 movies were done, So this studio, sorry, Sonic the Hedgehog. I know we're talking about all the different things that aren't about Sonic the Hedgehog. Anyway, this movie, let's talk about this movie. So this movie, the missed opportunities in it, like we said, they really liked it, but it did have some issues. First issue is Sonic's backstory. So you can go ahead and talk about that.
Okay.
Because I know you can.
The movie opens up and it starts with Sonic being chased by someone, like this little drone airplane thing we talked about. and he's doing a voiceover of like, you're probably wondering why a blue hedgehog is being chased by this man. Well, I'll tell you. And we rewind back to his home planet. He tells us about his home planet and how he loved it, how he could get across it in like 2 seconds flat. He's just this blue blur. And we see like a little tiny mini baby or toddler Sonic running across the island. And he goes to this little house and this giant owl that he calls Longclaw. And he actually, this is probably why I started talking Star Wars. He relates Longclaw, his kind of mother figure, to Obi-Wan. He's like, she's kind of like my Obi-Wan. You know, she trained me and raised me and all this stuff. And Longclaw's like, what are you doing? Why are you running? Like, so you could be caught. Someone could see your power. They want it. And he's like, oh, don't worry, I wasn't seen. And then almost immediately, like a bunch of these bad guys, I don't know what creatures they were. They had masks and bows and arrows. And they were small, but they started firing arrows at them, and Longclaw is protecting him and getting him out of there. And they're running. She grabs the rings and she's like, you have to go to this other world. You have to run away, and I'm going to stay here and defend you so they don't catch you. And Sonic is really sad and doesn't want to leave her, but she, encourages him to go through and tells him to keep running. And he goes through, and then as he turns around, he sees Longclaw standing in front of the portal, waiting for it to close, defending him. And basically, we know that Longclaw has given her life to defend Sonic. Now, you might think, oh, you missed some parts out of there. Like, surely they showed us or told us at some point some kind of relationship between Sonic and Longclaw. No, that's actually the entirety of the opening scene between them. That's all the backstory of his we get. She tells him he was born with these great powers and he must protect them and stay hidden from people who would use them for bad. And then arrows get shot at them and they run through a forest and he runs through a ring to another world. There really is very little backstory. It's very thin. And all they really had to do, what I would have done if I were in this position of being able to write the script or direct the movie or produce it or anything, I would have loved to have seen Sonic run across the island. You get nice views of the island, you learn about it. Doesn't take that long. And then he ends up at Longclaw's house, and they maybe, have dinner. And Longclaw is like, why did you run across the island? You know that these powers, people want to use them and they use them XYZ way, which is why they want them. Like some sort of explanation. And Sonic could be like, oh my gosh, I know, you tell me this every day. And Longclaws will like then stop running and showing off your powers, because clearly I'm telling you and it's not, getting in your head because you're still doing it. And that could explain why Longclaw is giving us this lovely exposition that we so desperately want and need. And then you see them spend some time together, you see their relationship and how they get along, and then they go to bed, and in the middle of the night the bad guys come, and then they run and have the fight and running through the forest, and then Longclaw sends him on his way with the rings and tells him why he has to keep running to protect his powers. Or maybe she told them that earlier. Either way, we know why he's running and we know why he's protecting his powers and who from. And then Sonic sees her, he doesn't actually see her die. We don't see her. It's just very heavily inferred because like the portal closes and that's the last we see of Longclaw, but Longclaw was being attacked by a bunch of people. That would have only added another minute or two, maybe 3, depending on how long they wanted the chase through the forest. But that would have added so much to the backstory. You would have gotten what exactly all his powers were, why people wanted them, and what people, like who wanted them, and what their relationship was like, so that when Longclaw dies, we felt some sort of sadness and grief. Other than, oh, that's sad, Sonic is so little and he lost his guardian, you actually would feel like he didn't just lose this guardian person, he lost his mother figure or his Obi-Wan figure, and we saw exactly what he was losing because he no longer would have that routine or that relationship in his life. We didn't get that.
Yeah. And I think it would have been, like you said, like they go to bed. If he had the same type of energy, and then he falls asleep, because that happens when him and the Donut Lord are in the hotel, and then James Marsden's character puts the blanket, like tucks him in. If you had seen that with Longclaw in the beginning, and then you see it again with Tom, it would have made that like that part of the movie mean that much more, because Sonic brings it up. He's like, I'm your best friend. And he's like, no, you're not. And he's like, well, I'm your best animal friend. And he's like, no, that would be my dog. And then he's like, but you tucked me in last night. Like that scene would have been more impactful as well, rather than just a joke. It could have been really impactful because it would have showed how he associated, Donut Lord with,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can hear you
I
chewing.
was holding the phone really far away. I was hoping you couldn't.
Anyway, it would have strengthened that relationship between Donut Lord and Sonic, and it, if we had seen Longclaw do the same action, and it would have explained why he was so attached to him in that way. So I think that was a missed opportunity that they could have strengthened the backstory, and it would have made the actual story that much better. And like you said, it would only have added like a minute or two to the runtime. So that was a
100%.
missed
Another part
opportunity.
of the backstory they missed was him setting up his life on Earth. They very easily could have, maybe the planet he went to after Longclaw died was Earth, and he's lost and everything, but he starts picking up these things that are interesting and meaningful to him. He finds this cave, he starts spying on the people, which, I mean, it's not creepy because it's Sonic and it's kind of what he has to do, and they don't make it creepy, but saying he spies on people is weird. But, like, he watches the people and he forms connections with them, because he can see them when they think no one's looking, so he kind of knows their true character. And that would have also added just another minute or two. Like, you could do it in montage style of him setting up his life on Earth and feeling connected to Earth and really wanting to be able to stay there because he's made a life for himself there. Because even though he is feeling lonely because he is alone, but he still has people that he can be around in a sense, and he has a life there. So that when Robotnik and them come and you see that he has to go to this mushroom world and he's torn because he knows Longclaw told him to keep running and he knows he has to keep his power out of bad people's hands, but he's made a life on Earth, and that would have also made that more impactful and made you feel for Sonic even more, because you would understand again what he was giving up, not just the first time, but for the second time giving up a home.
Right, exactly. And it doesn't really explain if he was like if the planet that he was
No, it
Earth.
doesn't. He pulls out a map at one
Um,
point, and you see like some circles which are meant to be planets, and there are some that have X's through them, and then one circle says next, and we're assuming that's the mushroom planet he has to go to next. Why that planet in particular has to be next, why there's X's through some of the planets, we never find out.
and that kind of goes into our next one, which is the motives of this movie are really thin. So Sonic's motive throughout the entire thing is that he has to stay hidden because people will want his superpower. But we don't know why, like we never get any explanation as to why he can't be a hero, why he can't show his face or make friends, because we just have this like vague, anybody who knows about it is going to try and steal it. Well, harnessing that kind of power is not easy, and it's not something that the average Joe would try to do, so it's kind of thin, like his motive is very thin. Dr. Robotnik's motive is very thin. Like Dr. Robotnik's is a kid who got bullied as in grade school because somebody was stronger than him, and so he decided that he was going to use robotics and technology to get back at people and to get back at society. And then he gets hired by the government to figure out what made the power outage, and that's like where everything comes from. That's all of it. And had it not been for the fact that Jim Carrey is a freaking comedic genius, that would have fallen so flat. Like that is such a cartoony motivation. He wants, and then he finds the quill, he finds Sonic Quill, and it turns out that it can power his robots, and he's like, oh, now I want this power for myself, and so it's like I guess it's supposed to be everything that Sonic has feared his whole life, is that somebody would figure out his power and they would try and harness it for evil. And it just so happens that Dr. Robotnik does that, but he does it because he was hired by the government to find the source of a power outage. Like it, it's there, it's just kind of thin, it's just kind of like, okay. And then you have Donut Lord's motives, which are, he really, like, his whole life as a police officer, he has wanted to save a life. Like, he's wanted someone to come to him in a life or death situation, and he wants to save the day and be like a real hero. And that's why he wants to go to a big city, because big cities have crime and they have real life and death situations. Well, when he meets Sonic, he is presented with, Sonic even says, this is a life or death situation. And so he's like, okay, well, I'm going to prove my mettle right now in this life or death situation and help out this little alien hedgehog. And that's like his motivation. And that's like all of it, and throughout the entire movie, he doesn't grow, like, it doesn't become like, oh, about his friend or about helping until the very end. Obviously that's like the climax, but it's there, it's just really thin. It's not a complex character, it's not a reluctant hero. It's literally, okay, well, I'm just going to help you because I've always wanted to help people, so that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, it's there, it's just kind of thin. And I feel like a lot of the motives in this movie are just kind of thin.
Yeah, I would have liked to see some deeper motives. Maybe something like Sonic isn't incapable of being seen. I hope I said that right. Basically, there's someone in town who calls him the Blue Devil. He's seen flashes of him. He knows he exists, and he's determined to catch him. They call him, was it Crazy Carl? They called him. I think the town called him that because he was so invested in trying to catch this Blue Devil. And I think it would have been neat. Like, what if Dr. Robotnik, tell me if this is a dumb idea, it came to me as you were talking. What if Dr. Robotnik at some point, like maybe when Sonic came to Earth originally, however long ago that was, saw something that he couldn't explain, and that's what he's been searching for his whole life. So when he sees the blue quill at the house, oh my gosh, their last name starts with a W. Donut Lord and Pretzel Lady's house. I can't remember their name. He remembers the blue something that he saw all those years ago, and that could be motivation. Maybe he was bullied for telling stories about seeing something, a blue alien, just like kind of Crazy Carl was in the town. That could have been a little bit of a stronger motivation for him to want to go after Sonic specifically. Like, he could have shown up because he got hired by the government. He's going to do his job and find out what's going on and make other people feel small, because that's what he does. But then he sees that quill and he sees the powers, and of course he sees Sonic when Sonic comes out to try and stop him from shooting Tom, and that would have given him a little bit more umph behind why he's going to all these great lengths.
I think I want to say in the comics and in the game, Dr. Robotnik is from the same planet as Sonic. And so I really would have expected that he was one of the, like, that he knew what Sonic was, and that he had followed him here, and he created a life on Earth. He, figured out all the robotics and everything. And then he, finally, because of the power outage, he finds Sonic. And that's honestly, like, when I saw commercials for this movie, honestly thought that was going to be the storyline because it's not exact to the source material, but I mean, that's a pretty well-known storyline of, the bad guy follows you and then finally you decide to stop running. I just think it's weird that he shows up and then becomes like the nemesis of Sonic, as opposed to he was already searching for that power. He was the one that was searching for the power. Like, that's what I would have done, is just had him be from that planet that Sonic was from. Or yeah, like when Sonic showed up, that's like, he's been looking for Sonic this whole time. That type of motivation. That went farther back than finding out the power outage. Like, some reason to be looking for Sonic, and then Sonic having that emotional breakdown and shooting out the lightning and, you know, causing the power outage that led him to Sonic. It just seems really weird that it's kind of like an origin story of their rivalry, you know, like how it started. And I think it's a weird way for it to start, you know, like it's a weird way for it to start. They already, like, Dr. Robotnik is already established as a mastermind. You know, he has an arsenal, a giant bus that also has a car inside of it, that has, you know, a drone inside of it, that has thousands of little drones that can chop the lid off of a car. You know, he already has all that, like, he is established, but then Sonic isn't established yet. So it's kind of weird that it's like the origin story of Sonic, but not of his nemesis. But it is the origin of him and his nemesis. His nemesis is just very far ahead of him. You know, they're not even playing.
Yeah, I agree. Anything basically that gave a motive before the power outage would have made a lot more sense. And also Tom's motivation to wanting to help Sonic. I mean, they start off with he wants to help save a life, and then it goes to Sonic guilt tripping him by saying, hey, I'm only, excuse me, by saying, hey, I'm only in this situation because you tranquilized me. And so all of this is your fault. Like, I could have been out of here already and they wouldn't have come. You wouldn't have had to punch anybody. And so that actually kind of leads us into, I think, is our next category about Tom specifically, maybe. So that leads us into our next category where Tom is on the run. And again, the government's trying to find him. And they labeled him as a domestic terrorist because, again, how else do you find someone really quickly and get the whole world watching? You label them as something that's really big and scary. And Taya, you can take this one. I set it up. You can take it from here.
Okay, so first off, so he knows that Dr. Robotnik is from the government. Like, he figures that out. He even says, like, there's a government guy. I punched this government guy. You know, like, he punches him in the face. He runs away, you know, and then he ditches his phone. So he understands the gravity of the situation, right? Like, he knows that the government's after them. He knows that he had to ditch his phone. He knows that they can trace him, and he knows that Dr. Robotnik is crazy and has guns and is willing to kill people. You know, like, he knows this. Yet he remains very calm. Like, his reactions to, oh, look, we're on TV. Oh, he made me look like I'm wanted for terrorism. And then, like, in the next scene or two, he's talking about how he can't wait to be a cop in San Francisco because he really wants to help people. And it's like, you're wanted for terrorism and murder. Like, they're not going to let you be a cop. You know, like, he has no reaction to that. He's, you know, he goes into the bar and is just hanging out at the bar for a long time. They go to a hotel, which I'm pretty sure you pay for with a credit card. He didn't seem like he had that much cash on him, you know, like, and so he's just not very, his reactions are very, like, odd. They're very non-existent, really. He doesn't have, like, he has a sort of freak out moment when he first sees Sonic and he shoots him with the tranquilizer dart, and then he's trying to explain what he is. But then, like, as soon as the government gets involved, like, all of his reactions just turn to complete acceptance and, like, oh, well, this is just gonna blow over. And then towards the end, before the final fight, they get Sonic's rings back up. They, like, get back up on top of the building. They get his rings back, and he's just like, okay, I'm gonna go now. I'm leaving. And it's like, oh, yay, we did it. Like, we got you back. You'll go to the mushroom planet, and everything will be fine. And he doesn't have a plan as to how he's supposed to now explain to the world that the reason he was being accused of terrorism was because he was helping a tiny blue alien get to another planet. You know, like, how is he going to explain his way out of that? Like, and he doesn't seem concerned about it at all. Like, he does not seem to care that he is literally wanted for terrorism. You know, like, he's just fine with it, and he's fine with letting Sonic go to another planet, even though nobody has explained, like he has not been acquitted of his crimes yet. Like he doesn't have any plan to be acquitted. He has no reason to be, yet he's fine. So it's really doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And so yeah, his reactions to things I think are a missed opportunity because I mean, he could still help Sonic. He could still, but he could have like freaked out a little bit more, or even come up with a plan. It could have been a crazy plan, but at least a plan of how he was going to explain what was, what he was doing and how the government was, messing up his life and how this crazy person was trying to capture him or trying to kill him. Like if they would have just thrown in like, hey, this is the plan. The plan is to do once you're gone or once we have the rings, we're going to show everybody and we're going to explain to everybody that I'm not a terrorist and we're going to prove that Dr. Robotnik is crazy and trying to kill me and I just did what was needed to be done. Like even if they had shown that he had some sort of long-term plan to get out of the situation he was in, then that would have been better. Or they could have just left the government out of it and he could like not know that it was the government after him. They could have left out the news story about him being a terrorist. And I think it would have been fine because they would have just been on the run from Dr. Robotnik. They wouldn't have been on the run from the government. It would have, and like the police, it would have just been the crazy guy, I think that would have been better. His reactions would have made sense then, but because
I
they put all
agree.
that stuff in, his
Also,
reactions don't make sense.
I forgot to mention this when we were talking, but I think it kind of goes along with in this category. There's a scene when they're in San Francisco, they're in the lobby of the building that they need to take all the way up to the roof to get the bag of magic rings back so Sonic can travel. And they have Sonic in a duffel bag and they have it open slightly so he can breathe and feel comfortable in there. And Sonic talks. And instead of trying to play it off, someone's like, do you have a child in there? Like your child? He's like, my child? No, but a child, yeah. He basically said, yeah, I have a kid in here. It's not mine though. And then he's like, oh no, but it's okay because I'm a police officer. And the people, there's two other people there who look really frightened and like awkward and what the heck? This guy who says he's a police officer has a child in a duffel bag. And he's like, oh, it's fine. He loves it in there. And Sonic is like, no, I don't. How could I? This is worse than the dog cage you put me in earlier. So now the people are looking really scared. And his fiance, not his fiance, dear heavens, sorry, his wife. I was watching something else earlier and there was a fiance, that's why. But his wife, she goes, oh, it's funny, isn't it? And she zips the duffel bag all the way up, causing Sonic to be like, no, like, don't do that. It smells awful in here. And the people just back away. One, they didn't even try playing it off like, oh no, it's just like my phone has like a weird ringtone or something. No, they straight up just said they had a child in their duffel bag. And were they not expecting them to try and call the police on them and be like, hey, someone's carrying a child in a duffel bag up to the roof of this building?
Not to mention his face was all over the TV. Like his sister-in-law like was like freaking out and yelling, and then he shows up to the building with his badge and nobody recognizes him from the TV and nobody cares. And he's like, it's okay, I'm a police officer. And they like just step away. His reactions to things are just weird because if you had an alien in a duffel bag and that alien was talking, you would come up with a better lie than, oh yeah, it's not my child, it's just a child, but it's okay, I'm a cop, like yeah, it was funny. Don't get me wrong, like it was funny, but it was
Yeah, it was just like a really
unbelievable.
weird. I totally expected them to try and play it off and try to kind of give a little nudge to Sonic to be like, hey, stay quiet. There's people here. You don't want to get found out. But no, and the fact that no one recognized him was also, like you said, unbelievable because the sister who lives in San Francisco saw him on the news. So people in San Francisco saw his face everywhere. They didn't even try to cover his face or give his badge to his wife or her to try and pretend that she was a police officer. None of that.
It was like it wasn't an intricate part of the comedy of the childlike story they were telling, and so they just didn't tell it. Like everything in this movie is kept very superficial. Like there's no real deep moments. There's no real plot, like planning moments. There's no like grounding, I guess, moments. It is very much a fun, like fantasy cartoon movie. There was parts of it that were really good, like the relationships and stuff were really good. And like I said, I love the chemistry between the actors. But yeah, like there was several times where it was very superficial in like they didn't have a plan, they didn't have a backup, they didn't have a way of getting out. Like they just it didn't serve the plot at all for them to have it, and so they just didn't. Like it didn't serve the plot for him to come up with a better story than that. So they just didn't, which is why I think they should have left out the fact that they were running from the government completely, and then it would have fixed a lot of stuff. It wouldn't have fixed the whole "there's a child in a bag" thing. But I wish that they had done like his wife, like if he had his entire the same bit, but then his wife, instead of saying, "Oh, it's fine," and then zipping up the bag, if his wife had been like, "It's a toy, you can record on it, just it's okay," like something like that. That to play it off, I think would have been better rather than her just zipping up the bag. And not like they don't even try to play it off. So anyway, yeah. So that was one of the things, was just like his reactions to things that were super huge, big things didn't really seem to match up with them being super really big huge things. Like there was no urgency in his character. All of the urgency was in Sonic's character, and Sonic didn't actually want to go. He didn't want to leave Earth, so it's like there wasn't a lot of urgency except for in the action scenes.
I would agree with you on that. And it's kind of like we talk before our podcast most of the time to hammer out what we're going to say are the missed opportunities. And I said I felt like because they geared this toward a younger audience, they maybe fell into the pitfalls, which I really disagree with, of downplaying the emotions, downplaying, like oversimplifying plots and everything to try and make it fit with the younger audience, but because they think they can't handle more complex emotions or plots or storylines or motivations or anything like that. And I really disagree with that, especially, well, depending on your audience. If this was an audience for toddlers, obviously that's different. But I think the target audience they were going for was, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 and up. It's definitely a family movie. The whole family can sit down and enjoy because it's PG. Yeah. There's nothing really too bad in it. There is one concerning thing we'll talk about in a bit. But like I think they just kind of did stuff like that because I don't know. I really think they fell into those pitfalls that some people get into of, we want to make it family friendly. We want to make it so that kids can watch it. So we're going to just oversimplify everything. And there's going to be some things that don't make sense, but it's okay because it's for kids. And it's kind of like, no, it's not really okay to do that, in my opinion. You can make something entertaining. You can make it family friendly. You can make it PG. Kids can enjoy it, adults can enjoy it, and it can still have complex storylines and big emotions and real stakes at hand.
Yeah, and I mean, just because it's a kids movie and it's going to end happy and that everything's going to work out, that's the joys of kids movies, is that hero always wins kind of a thing. And so, but because of that, I feel like you would have more freedom to go into those places because that it's going to end up okay. And so you can have deeper conversations, you can have deeper things because it's all going to work out in the end. It's, I don't know, it's kind of like Enchanted, where he has this reluctance to anything that isn't complete, like any love or things that can't be controlled. He has And then he finds a girl who's just completely out of control, and that's kind of, it's that type of thing where you can, it's going to end up happy. So it's okay to have characters that are cynical, that are um, doubting this. And it's okay to have stakes that are a little higher. And it's okay to have more complex, emotions. And I think Pixar, you know, the thing about Pixar is that they make you cry, but they're also kids movies and kids love them. And so it's kind of, you can have the balance and kids are not going to complain about it, and this was an action movie for kids. And I think that they could have been a little bit more mature with the things that they did. And not saying that it needs to be immature or inappropriately mature, but just it could be planning better or getting into the stakes of things. Or if you're going to leave it this superficial, then leave it this superficial. Don't, like with the backstory, if they were going to do a backstory that wasn't going to affect anything, they should have just told us. They shouldn't have shown us who, Longclaw was. They shouldn't have even put that character in. They could have just had him say, start with him on Earth and that's it. Like they didn't need that. And they didn't need Tom on the news wanted for terrorism. Like they didn't need that stuff. If you want to keep it superficial and dumbed down, then do it. If you want to have a good family whole hearty story, then do it. I feel like this movie was kind of in between. It was just thin, like it wasn't bad. It was definitely enjoyable, but there was a lot of things, especially with the plot and the stakes and the motivations and the reactions, that were just thin. Like they just like scratched the surface. And honestly, I feel like had they not had such a good cast, this movie would have fallen flat because of that. Like the fact that Jim Carrey is believable as a crazy, psycho villain is like made it real, and James Marsden being the adorable James Marsden that he is, like that made it better. I think that if they had cast anybody else for any of the roles, it would have fallen flat because this is a very thin story, and the only thing that gave it
I
any
agree.
meat
Yeah, the
was the
actors
actors.
definitely helped it because these are characters that are ridiculous. Because the thing about adapting from comic books or video games is it's very easy to go too far with the ridiculousness because very often, especially the ones that are getting adapted video games and comic books, have a lot of supernatural elements, and that can come off really cartoony and kid-like. And I mean, really, Marvel, with starting with Iron Man on, changed that to make it more realistic and more geared toward mainstream and adults and everything, made it more acceptable, but it's still very easy to make it way too cartoony, way too over the top, to the point where people get out of the world because it's so unbelievable. Your sense of putting aside real world only lasts for so long and for so much ridiculousness. But the actors they chose pulled everything off really well.
Yeah.
And also, I think the script had a pretty good balance overall, even though I feel like they were missing some stuff. Like I said before with Wade, I think other people would have put Wade in a lot more as a comedic relief and given him a lot more dialogue and a lot more scenes. And I'm really glad this movie didn't, because at least for me, even though the actor did a really, really good job with Wade and probably could have pulled it off, a person with that much, I'm trying to be so nice because I really like Wade, but he wasn't the smartest. He wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Let's just say that. And that only is funny and believable and wanting to be seen on screen in a movie like this for so long. And I think they knew that and they had the right balance. You understood who he was very quickly, and he was in pivotal, crucial scenes that he needed to be in and nothing more. So I think the combination of the balance of things like that, along with
Yeah.
actors who pulled off their characters in a way that really only they could, really did make this movie a joy to watch, even though I was missing more things, like more backstory, more motivation. I still really enjoyed it. I'm still going to recommend this, and I'll probably watch it again at some point. My daughter loved it.
Yeah. And honestly, I liked the design, the costumes for like Mr. Robotnik, and the fact that his robotics have the same stylization as like the video game. I really thought that they did a good job with that. I liked the way that they handled him. The fact that they gave him the glasses that were a little too small for him made him look more like the cartoon. And then when you see like the design of his robots and stuff, they have like this shape that kind of looks like the mustache and kind of looks like the red eyes and everything. And so I really liked the design of this movie. Like the way that Dr. Robotnik's lab was set up. I thought it was really good. And I thought that there was a lot of nods to the original characters and stuff that I liked. Again, I wouldn't go into this as thinking like it's going to be, it's kind of, yeah, it's like nods and homages to the source material, not using the source material, you know. But I actually really did like it. I thought they did a good job. He did a really good job of being cartoony without standing out in a not cartoon world. You know what I mean? Like design wise. And so I really liked that. I think they did a lot of really good job, like good things in this movie. So, design wise, acting wise, and they just didn't go as deep as I would have liked because that's the type of person I am. I like the I like the deeper stuff. Um, Anyway, so moving on, the next one is the inconsistency of his speed. So Sonic, it talks about how fast he is, and he can go across the entire island in 2 seconds, and then it it goes like he runs west, which by the way, San Francisco is not straight west of Montana, in case you were wondering. Like, he did not give him proper directions. Um, but anyway, it was funny to me because there's a lot of inconsistency with how fast he's going and just how fast he is because couple of times everybody else freezes, you know, because he's going so fast that everybody else freezes. Well, then at the end when everybody freezes, they're not frozen, they're still moving, just moving really slow. And then when we first see him and he's playing the baseball game because he's so fast, he can beat the ball and he can play all of the different positions. But then we see him run in a circle and he runs so fast that he digs into the ground, and that's when the lightning and stuff happens. But it's like, if he was actually going that fast to where other people would freeze, first of all, why is he leaving a blue streak some of the time? And like the physics of it, like one of the things like X-Men does it and different movies, Marvel, where they have a speedster and they freeze time because they're going so fast. The residual outcome of that is a blast of like energy and air, and like people wouldn't just like, oh, fall over. Like he moves James Marsden's character to the bar, and I'm like, if he moved him going that fast, he would have slammed into that and probably like broken ribs and stuff. So it was a little unrealistic and it was inconsistent. Um, but again, it's a kids movie and that's just what you're gonna do. So, um, but I think it was a missed opportunity to not have an explanation as to why it was different or inconsistent. Because like at one point he says he can't run because he got shot in the leg with the dart, but then like the next couple of scenes you see him run all the way to the ocean, and then he runs to the um, giant rubber ball museum and goes to the gift shop, and it takes him like 2 seconds. And so I don't know, it was interesting. And then also in the beginning we see Donut Lord, and he's got a speedometer gun, which I don't know where he got a speedometer gun that went up that high, because most speedometer guns end at 199 miles per hour, just in case you're wondering. They don't go to 200, they don't go over 200. Don't ask me why I know that. But yeah, so like going 200 and something miles an hour or 300 miles, like, I mean, maybe not 300. I don't know how fast 300 would be, but I feel like an airplane would go that fast and you can still see an airplane. Nobody freezes because of how fast, like he wasn't going, he was going a lot faster than that. You know what I mean? At different times in the movie. So anyway, that was just one of the things that I wish they could have either explained why it was different or just not done it that way. But I also kind of think that they shouldn't have had the entire bar scene in the movie because it's a kids movie, and I think it's weird that they have a bar scene in it. So the fact that his speed is different in that one is just one of the reasons why I didn't like the
Yeah, I
bar
don't really
scene.
have anything to add. You're the one who really noticed that more than me. Um, I didn't notice it until you stated all that. I was like, oh yeah, his speed is inconsistent. But yeah. Also the fact that we forgot to mention it, but there is a scene at the beginning when Sonic rescues a turtle from being run over, and then he takes the turtle basically for like a joyride. Like he holds the turtle out and then goes super, super fast, and you see the turtle kind of smiling because he's never gone so fast. I thought that was a really cute little scene that they put in there.
Yeah.
But that poor turtle, ever after that, is never going to be able to match that. I know.
Yeah, but he'll always have
I
the
just hope he didn't
memories.
get motion sick
Or
or
not. I don't
anything.
know how long turtles' memories are. I don't know.
Happy turtle.
Yeah. Well, he didn't seem to. He was happy. Yeah. So the next one and the last one that we wanted to talk about was how destructive this movie was. So Dr. Robotnik blows up a lot of stuff, like a lot of stuff. And when I say stuff, I mean cars and buses and buildings, all within a completely populated, not evacuated city with a lot of people around and in the cars and in the buses. And it doesn't really, and he like destroys national monument, like he destroys the pyramids, he destroys the Sphinx, like he very, very destructive and deadly. And so you're kind of, but they don't ever mention that. And I think I don't know, that's just a pet peeve of mine when in movies they have no repercussions for destroying people and killing people. And the missed opportunity is that they could have had that same fight not in the city. Like, they could have gone anywhere in the world. Like he's in the desert for a part of it, but then he runs up the pyramids and then he shoots the pyramids and then he runs on the Sphinx and he destroys the Sphinx. It's like he could have just gone into the woods and had the same action without the death of people or the destruction of, you know, uh wonders of the world, you know. So I don't know. I don't like it when they just kind of graze over that type of stuff. And I don't think that in a kids movie it's appropriate to, go into detail about, the death of all of the people that, you've destroyed and blown up and stuff. I think that you shouldn't blow anybody up. Like you should just have it in unpopulated places, not in the middle of a city, him blowing up cars and buses that are filled with people, and then just forget about it and be like, oh yeah, well, whatever, no big deal, that never happened. Because that's like at the end of the movie, when the guy gives him the thing to Olive Garden, he's like, it never happened, it never happened. And it's like, okay, but what about all of the people that like their loved ones were on that bus, or like no repercussions for those people at all. So
The gift card,
maybe they got
$50
an Olive
gift card.
Garden thing too, but still a gift card. Yeah. So anyway, that's just something that I dislike in movies where they just pretend like, oh, it's fine that I'm gonna blow up a city, but then they like kill people, but you don't get any like reaction to that. So I would have preferred it if they had
Yeah,
just
no,
done it
I
in
I
places that were
completely
not
agree with that. And
populated.
it's funny, Jonathan, my husband, and I just finished watching Captain America Civil War. So when you're talking about you don't like it when movies have destruction and there's no repercussions, Civil War is very much so about the repercussions of the Avengers from the beginning. Um, the destruction that they did on several cities, even when it wasn't their fault and they were just trying to protect cities, people's lives were still affected. And I think, and I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier as well, like superhero movies, Marvel really was the Marvel Cinematic Universe is really what brought comic movies based off comic books, excuse me, to be the big phenomena they are now. And so I think that's one of the things that they did really well is they didn't just over the fact that of destruction, people's lives were lost, people's livelihoods were destroyed at least for a short time while they had to rebuild, and that there's lasting effects, and not everyone looks at them with a happy smile on their face and says thank you for saving me. A lot of people actually think badly of them. I liked that they did that. And but you're right, for a really young audience, it's best probably not to get into death and destruction nearly as much because you don't want to encourage things like that. And also you just don't want that to be a really heavy weight on their mind of like, oh my gosh, like one of my favorite characters led to a lot of bad stuff happening and that's complex. So yeah, I would agree. I wish Sonic would have taken one of those rings and they would just be in the middle of the desert or the middle of the field or the woods, nowhere, even on the middle of the ocean, nowhere, something where no one was going to be getting hurt and nothing, excuse me, was getting destroyed. That would have been a lot better, I think. Just a note to all those who want to create movies for children and adults. That's one of the differences in the movies is how much destruction and death can you
Yeah.
show and how much can the audience handle the knowledge of their characters causing said death and destruction.
Yeah. Exactly. Um, so that was the last thing that we had discussed talking about. There's a couple of extra things like um he talks about like the phone booth, but it never shows that why he knows that he's going to the phone booth. He the he takes the wheel while James Marsden character beats off one of the robots, and he says, "Oh, I put it on cruise control," which I'm like, okay, well that makes perfect sense because Sonic can't reach the pedals. But then Sonic brakes and gets it back up to speed. Like he does both of those things whilst driving, and it's like, okay, well you just set it up to make it make sense, and then you killed it. Um, so so that was just fun. Like, like they do funny things like that. At one point they have an upside down shot that spins to the right side up. I don't like that. That's something that cinematographers do to try and be edgy. I'm never going to be a fan of it. It just makes me sick. But yeah, other than that, there's not a lot of, I don't have a lot of other issues other than, again, the bar scene. I don't think it's appropriate to, like, I mean, if he went into the bar or went to like the monster truck rally or something, like I would have been fine. But they have like the bucket list discussion because Sonic wants to do everything on this bucket list before he leaves Earth, and that all happens in the bar. But then the fact that they like do it all in a bar, it's like, and then like James Marsden is like drinking a beer, and you're just like, okay, but this is a kids movie, right? Like, I don't know. I don't think a bar scene is all that appropriate. I mean, even like in um Tangled, when they go into a bar, like it's made light of, like it's funny and it's not a real, it's like a tavern and it's like it's very unrealistic. However, in this movie, it was very realistic, and it was, I mean, other than like nobody cared that he was a talking hedgehog, and so it was just kind of like, I don't know, not a fan. But I wish that they would have had him not in a bar, but a restaurant or something else that
Yeah.
was a little less adult, I guess. Um, So
I
that was
had
my
another
only,
note, and I'm
yeah, that
trying
was
to
my only other
remember because I thought of
note
it. I
that
was
I
like, oh yes, I
had.
had one more thing to say. I remember right now. We never find out exactly why the sister-in-law hates Tom so much. We know that they don't like each other. He says, makes a comment of, oh, has she convinced you to
True.
leave me and divorce me yet? And she's constantly trying to convince her sister to leave him. But I don't understand why. I mean, this man worked 3 jobs when his wife was in veterinary school so that they could pay the bills and pay for tuition so she could achieve her dream. He's a police officer in a small town. Like, he's one of two. And they seem to have a really nice house, and they both seem to make a living, and he seems really sweet and supportive of her. The niece likes him. The sister-in-law's daughter seems to enjoy her aunt and uncle's company. So other than for a comedic effect, because the scenes with her were funny, especially when they like tied her up with jump ropes and the daughter was like ignoring her mom because she knew her mom was being annoying in that moment and like not. And then the daughter gets all hyper on sugar and like runs around her without untying her, because what kid wouldn't take advantage of mom tied down to run around the house and cause destruction? Like, those are funny things.
And she's like, put on,
Like,
yeah, and
those
she's
are
like,
really
put on
funny.
my
Like
Fitbit.
she did
I
a
need to get
great
my
job. She
steps
had
in.
funny lines. I just don't understand why she hated Tom so much.
Yeah, it never goes in. Like, again, motives are thin because, it's funny that she's that way, but it doesn't explain why she's that way. And it doesn't explain why the wife puts up with it, like, or why she doesn't like defend him one way or the, like one way or the other. They just kind of accept that that's who she is. And it's like, why would you accept that? So anyway, so yeah, I get that. But overall, I really like this movie. It's
I
fun,
agree.
it's really cute, it's witty, and it's acted really well. And they changed the creepy hedgehog to being the cute, adorable hedgehog that we all
I
know
actually kind of
from the
hope they
Sega
do go
game.
forward
So
with the sequel. Well,
good on them.
I hesitate to say that with movies nowadays, unless it's no, I can't even say that. I was going to say unless it's set up to be sequel. I can't even say that because as we discussed Star Wars, dear heavens, there's a curse with sequels lately, especially. And so, on one hand, if I really enjoy a movie, I really want a sequel because I would love for the story to continue. They set it up to continue. I want to revisit that town and those characters. But on the other hand, I really want the sequel to work. I want it to be good. I don't want it to kind of ruin any part of the original story or original characters for me. So basically, I want them to do a sequel that is as good, if not better, than the first movie and not mess it up. And I don't know if that's a realistic ask at this point in time.
And they,
Oh, is it? I hope it's
well,
good.
they've announced a sequel. I think it's due this year.
Let us know if you know. Let us
Yeah,
know in our comments on
I'm
social
pretty sure.
media or message us because
So
I don't know, and I'm hesitant to say I want one just because of the sequel curse, not just with this product, with literally every movie. I'm actually even scared to watch the third To All the Boys I Loved Before.
oh,
That's
I've
what
seen
I
it.
figured,
It's
but
better
I
than the
got
second one,
about
but not as
not
good as the first
maybe
one.
30 minutes. We'll talk about this later too. Sorry, people on the podcast, but basically what I'm saying is there's a curse of sequels, and it's made me very hesitant to watch them. Um, so I still haven't taken the plunge to watch certain sequels to certain movies because I'm scared. So if you know of any movies that have really, let me know because I want to watch them and enjoy them and be happy. They were able to make a sequel to a movie that was as good, if not better, than the first one. Oh my gosh, I'd be so happy. Let me know. Your Little Sisters Productions. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Not Twitter yet, but maybe one day when Twitter likes us. It just keeps Twitter basically has us in this loop of saying that we're not who we say we are, but when I try to verify us, it has me in this endless loop of trying to log in, telling me the login is wrong, and then telling me you're not who you say you are, click here to say who you are, and then asking me to log in again.
Yeah. Well, we might just have to create a new Twitter account. And when we do, we will let you guys know. And we will get you our Twitter handle. And you can follow us on Twitter as well as Instagram and Facebook already. And if you have any movie recommendations, whether they are sequels or not, let us know. And if you have any, like if you love the movie or if you hate the movie, let us know and we will definitely look into it and we respond to all of our comments
Instagram.
and suggestions on our Facebook and Instagram. I forgot what it's called for a second. And our Instagram. So yeah, this was our thoughts on Sonic the Hedgehog, the 2020 film starring Jim Carrey and James Marsden. And whoever played the voice of Sonic the
Wait,
Hedgehog,
was it
it's the guy
Ben from
from
Parks
Parks
and
and
Rec?
Rec. Crap, I forgot his name. Sorry.
Oh my gosh,
But
what's his name?
anyway,
I know his name. Oh, that's gonna bug me. I will
I
put it
think
in the
so, yeah.
social media post. It's not Ben.
No, it's not Ben.
Jean Ralphio. Was
It's
it
the
Jean
annoying
Ralphio?
friend of Tom's.
Well, I'll find the name of the actor and I'll put it in social
Yeah,
media.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Awesome. All right, well, be sure to check us out on social media. Make sure that you don't miss an episode
This is
and
Laura.
let us know what movies you'd like us to do
Bye.
next. And signing off, I'm Taya.